see, plowing forward, we've got our connector that we were going to look at this month, Google Maps. Joe from Portage Bay did a little bit of experimenting with it. We've been using Google Maps for quite a long time, doing integration work with the mapping API and the routing API and the clustering API, and all of those have a basic requirement that your address data be geocoded. And we've historically worked directly with the geocoding API, but Joe did a little bit of work using that capability in Claris Connect. So I'm going to turn it over to him for a quick look at the Google Maps connector.
Cool. Thanks, John. Hey everyone, I am Joe Ranne. I'm also with Portage Bay and I'm in Omaha, Nebraska. So get your Midwestern jokes out now. But if you notice, my accent is non-existent. Okay, sorry. I'm also a dad, so you'll get a lot of dad jokes. Okay. This is admittedly my first time using Connect. So when John had asked me to take a look at the Google Maps integration, my knee-jerk reaction was to fire up Postman and start figuring out what kind of calls I'm going to need to build. So I took a step back, or had to force myself to take a step back, not overcomplicate things, and start building this using default Connect tools. So let me share my screen. I'll show you what I came up with. Okay, here's the flow that I've come up with. I am using it from the triggering event is from a FileMaker solution, and all I did was take the standard contacts template that comes with packaged with FileMaker 19. I added some specific fields to the that we're going to be using for the geocoding process from Google, and then we're just doing a flow using Connect. So I'll show you the scripting and all that sort of processes that came with the instructions from the flow, which were super handy. It's a lot easier than starting with a Postman, blank screens and trying to set up my environment and getting just that connection to work before I build it into a FileMaker solution. I was very impressed with how easy this was. Okay, so the flow, as they mentioned before, the whole process is built off of essentially a URL that you're calling in whatever form. In this situation, our script trigger is a button that we're using. I use these steps here to build a script that sets up my JSON before passing it into this flow, which then follows the course of time and space. So we've got our solution over here. This is a hosted solution. Initially, I was doing it with an offline solution just because I wanted to see how it would work. But ideally, this works best in a hosted environment because then you can authenticate. It does a much better job of integrating that functionality into Connect. Everybody hear me okay? Okay, yep. Cool. Yeah. I wasn't sure if we lost me.
It sounded like it, but you're still there.
Okay.
Do you feel lost?
I'm in the Midwest, so yes. All I see are prairies all around me. Okay. This is the script. I've copied all of the instructions that came in the flow are really handy. It tells you straightforward, create a script, set up a variable called this, set your JSON to this. What I ended up doing is using the default FileMaker functions to build the JSON rather than, the old school method of building JSON prior to the set JSON syntax. was this. You build your curlies, you comment out your quotes. I think if there's one little bit of feedback was that this can be updated to use your standard set JSON or JSON set element functions. But other than that, it's very straightforward. You you can pass additional data into this JSON object, which is what I've done here. I'm passing, this is the default action and script that is sent in with those instructions. This is the address that I'm building in another string, which I'll show you real quick. Google, because I've worked with Google before, they expect a certain formatted string, with the plus signs. So I already just knew to build that out. So what I'm doing is just putting all of the values together and then substituting it with a plus sign. So it substitutes all the spaces with a plus sign. So you've got a Google stringified value. But anyway, sending that in with the JSON object, sending the record ID, which is your standard FileMaker get record ID, and then your primary key of that record. So this is the primary key of the address record, of the related addresses record that we're going to be sending in to the flow. That's, then once you have all your data, you set up your curl options, which if anybody has ever set up curl options in FileMaker knows that this can be problematic. So I'm glad they just kind of gave us a copy and paste in the format that was specific to Connect. So that's really handy. And when that's all set up, you run it, and at that point, Connect recognizes the data that was passed into this. It basically works like a webhook URL, and then from there you can build the rest of your flow to match whatever is passed into that. So let me close this. Here I've built in a really simple if statement. To be done properly, we'd probably want to put more error capture and making sure there's no special characters included in the string and all sorts of stuff. You could also do that in the FileMaker solution, but it's nice to be able to handle it here and then return a response saying something wasn't correct. And that way it can be called for multiple solutions. So simple if statement. And then from there, we're asking Google, this is the one of the actions available from Google. There are two actions. There's lookup coordinates and lookup address. Both of them essentially do, oh, let me check the chat just to make sure I'm not missing something. Thanks, Brandon. I just saw the comment there. Okay. There are two actions supplied by Google in the Connect library. We've got lookup coordinates and then lookup address. Lookup coordinates requires a string to essentially search off of. And lookup address requires your geolocation, so your longitude. And they both return similar sets of data. It's a JSON object that's returned, but from there you can do all sorts of additional things with that data. So I'll show you that in the return response as well. So we've got our what we're going to be doing, our action configured. Now from here, it's all about setting this up. Was super simple. You select your app you want to use. In this instance, initially the Google was way down below, but you've got your address or your coordinate lookup. Then you connect the account. So this is where I will say you do have to have a Google developer account, which is free. You can set it up on the fly as you're even doing it. But all you really have to do is allow access to the app. It's super straightforward. Once you've got it connected to your Google account, then you can go in and say, all right, out of the JSON that I was passed into this, this is the object I want to use to perform for Google to perform the find. And so you can go into here, say this is the object that I passed into it, and this is the string that I passed in, and this interface, just to be able to select that in an easy manner. Man, that's a game changer, I think. And then once we have that configured, let me discard these changes. It sends that response to this next step, whatever you define. You can either reply with it directly. You can do all sorts of stuff. There are many options, but what we're doing is connecting it to that same file that we are calling it from. So we've selected which file, which action we're going to be doing. So you can do a number of other items here. I mean, you could, if you wanted to, you could even execute a script which could call back another flow, or use a webhook. I mean, it's limitless. So then you're setting up the account for the file that for the server and file that you'll be connecting to. And then this is what I thought was brilliant. You can choose, so there's a function that queries the file that you've configured, and you can choose which layout that you want it to return to. And then it goes and grabs all of the fields available on it. So that's using the FileMaker Data API to do this. But for the fact is they built a really simple interface for connecting that data directly to a solution. It's so easy. So what I've defined is all of the parameters from my initial call. So I'm using the record ID, which this has to be included because it's an expected integer. So that was an error I got to play with for a while, and I wasn't sure how to handle it. But then after thinking about it, oh yeah, that's a record ID. That's a function in FileMaker. And then from there, I am getting this. So this is the I don't know why my primary key isn't in here. Interesting. It was in there. Well, let's put it in. Okay, so that's the primary key of passing back into it. The results, this is kind of interesting. So you can actually get all of the entire results that are provided from Google, which is a lot more than I would have expected. So you can get all sorts of specific information, or Google responds with every bit of information that it has on that address. So out of there, I'm parsing the latitude, longitude, the county name, the address that it's formatted, the neighborhood. So just a few examples of what kind of stuff is returned. And these are all fields in the FileMaker solution. So if I look at the solution itself, go to the addresses layout. These are all, this is a layout that I've created just for this specific purpose. It has all the fields that is queried back in the data API call into the flow, and it's just so easy to set up. And so now we'll go and run this flow so I can show you. And I broke it. I don't know why, but we can find out here. Oh, that's right. The primary key cannot be modified. That's why I didn't include it. It's expecting any field to put into there, into that edit record. It's expecting to edit those with the value you pass into it. So that's why I did not include the primary key. But now if I run it, there. So you've got your, additional information I put into these fields here. the entire result is in this one field. I can pull this out and look at it if I want. And of course, it's all just a standard JSON block. So there's additional information. You can choose to save it. You can choose to whatever you want to do. But the fact that it was so easy to configure and dump into here, just really makes this a handy process. We have a number of solutions where the client wants to be able to access or geocode an number of locations, and then do whatever. They can build directions or routes. So the fact that you can so easily set up a geocode makes that implementation of Google Maps so much more expandable. So there's a lot you can do with that information. And that was very wordy. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to shoot them my way. But that's all I really have, I think, unless I missed something.
I think that was great. I mean, any questions?